So a question that I've heard at least a few times over the years is how do I lead people in worship when I'm in the midst of conflict? Whether that's my own conflict with somebody in the congregation or on the team, or if it's just a conflict in general that's happening out there that I'm aware of. And let me say this, in what we're going to share here, myself and my friend Dave Helmuth, we're not suggesting that you should ignore the conflict. It probably, especially if it's your own conflict, it probably needs to be dealt with at some level. And so you need to do something with it, all right? But at the same time, there are some keys for us as worship leaders of what we should do in the midst of that. And again, my friend Dave Helmuth is going to share with you for a few minutes here. And Dave actually mentors people who mentor worship leaders, as well as doing that himself. And he's just got a wealth of experience to draw from, and I think he has some great insight on this particular subject. So I'm just going to let Dave talk to you for a minute.
Sometimes God puts you in a situation that is a perfect mortal and pestle thing for you. And the idea of that hard, grinding experience is that fragrance is released, is that beauty is released, is that people can see and appreciate more of what God is putting in you. I certainly have had Sundays where I'm standing in front of the congregation and I know the conflict that exists, and I know that people have said this about me, and I know that he's never going to follow me, and he's one of my leaders and he's just not going to do that. And incredibly just difficult environment, and another leader that is in conflict with my spouse, which is a whole different level of stuff, because I can deal with it for me, but you're going after her, okay? And they're standing in the second row, and I'm leading worship. And for me, I have to go back to my call. What am I called to do from the Lord's perspective? Like, what does He design me to do? But then also, what am I hired to do? Or what am I been scheduled to do here? Like, at a very practical level, I'm here to create a space where people can meet with God. All of us sinners can meet with Him, and so we're broken. And this hurts to do this. This costs me something. I'm saying these words in my songs, and for me, one of the costs in that moment is to keep my eyes open, because I just want to shut all of them out and just be with Jesus. But I can't, because that's not my job. My job is to create a space where they can meet God. And if I close myself off as a leader to them by closing my eyes, they can't. Not that they can't connect with God. I'm not like a priest like that. They can't as easily follow where I'm trying to lead them, because I've cut myself off from them. So there's a terrible vulnerability and just dependence on God in that to be able to stay that course and create the space and to love people, even that you don't wanna, and that you're hurt by, and doing that in a way that's honest.
I really like what Dave said in there about that our job is to create space for people to connect with God. And it's true. That's even in the midst of conflict, that's really what we're all about. Years ago at our congregation, where I was the main worship leader for a number of years, at one point there was some pretty strong conflict, kind of upheaval going on in the congregation. And I just had this sense that my responsibility was to keep our eyes focused on God, my own, as well as helping the congregation to do that same thing. And so week after week after week, I would lead worship and just help not even think or talk about the stuff that was happening, but instead keep our focus on God. And there was a guy in the congregation who came to me with a drawing that he had done. He's clearly not an artist, but it was a hand-drawn picture of a guy on a bulldozer plowing a bunch of stuff out of the way, a bunch of crud, getting it out of the way. And he said, "Tom, this is you. This is what you've been doing in the midst of all that's happening here." And I'm not telling you that to make it sound like I'm somebody special. I'm saying that's really our job as worship leaders, is to keep the focus on God. We could get caught up in the conflict, but ultimately as we're up there in front leading worship, our job is to point the people toward Him and to keep their focus there. And again, I'm not suggesting that we should ignore conflict, especially if it's a conflict that we're having that needs to be dealt with. Maybe we need to get somebody else involved, the pastor, whoever, in dealing with this conflict. But at the end of the day, our real job as a worship leader in that role, in that setting, is to keep the focus on Him, to create that space, like Dave said, to allow people to connect with God.
Brought to you by myworshipleadingcoach.com.
Helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.